Welcome back to our coverage, obviously from Tampa, Philly, and Toronto tonight, but also there in the Stampede City is the ceremony for Mika Kiprusoff. Our guest on After Hours are honoring his sweater this evening in a very special ceremony that's on Sportsnet 360 as we speak. If you want to join us for that, Saturday headlines, though it's trade deadline, you got to listen to this. Elliotte Friedman's phone bill is $11 billion. So let's start with
Thank you for
Pettersson.
listening to the pod. I know you do. Well, look, it's a huge win for the Vancouver Canucks, Pettersson, and of course their fans. Pettersson agreeing to sign, officially announced this morning, and basically it was his decision. Everybody knew that. He would decide when he was ready to whether or not to extend for the Canucks. And one of the things that happened was earlier this week, before one of their practices, Pettersson went into a side room with Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin, and they just talked with him about the whole situation, the pressures, the positive an effect an extension could have on the team, what might have to happen if he wasn't ready yet. I think the Canucks always planned to go to him around this time before the deadline. And at that time, Pettersson said, you know what, I'm thinking about it, I'm liking what I'm seeing. And they said to him, sleep on it, come back to us, and if you're ready, we'll do it. And the next day he called them and said, let's proceed. And that got us to last night and then today, 8 years, $11.6 million AAV. Of course, huge win for the Canucks, Pettersson, and their fans. And we'll see where they go from here. I still think they're looking for a forward run around the deadline. They announced that Tyler Myers is out for a little bit with a lower body injury. That's not an injury that is expected to take him into the playoffs, so it won't affect their in-season cap. But I do think they're going to look potentially more for a forward than a D, but you know Rutherford and Allvin, they'll look at everything.
You know, Allvin, obviously a Swedish core. Kevin Bieksa had that when they were a powerhouse, and now it's happening again for the Vancouver Canucks. In Calgary, it's interesting what Craig Conroy's doing. He gets Sharon Govich for Toffoli, then he gets Kuzmenko in his second deal, and now it's Artem Grishnikov coming over in the Tanev deal. So he's building a bit of a Belarusian Fab Five there in Calgary, and he's got a couple of more dominoes to go.
Yes, and while the ceremony is going on, I think this was tough for the Flames. Just around the ceremony, they didn't want to talk today for obvious reasons. They want Kiprusoff to be the focus. When it comes to Hanifin, he's focusing on places, and they're focusing on places where he wants to sign with an extension. And the belief is that Tampa Bay is his number one choice. Now, I think if this was so easy to do, it would be done already. So everybody continues to work at it. We'll see how this goes over the next week. I believe they're his preferred destination, but if they can't make it work with the Lightning, we'll see how that develops and how Calgary and Hanifin proceeds. Jacob Markstrom yesterday was in a scrum. Eric Francis asked him about how everything had been going, and Markstrom was critical of the process and some of the decisions made by the Flames. This is what I think he's upset about. I believe he's upset that the Flames went to him and told him about the possibility of a deal with New Jersey. He indicated he would be willing to consider going there, and then the plans changed. That deal obviously never happened, and then at some point Markstrom was informed that the Flames preferred to keep him because he was playing great and the team was going well. I think that bothered him. I think his feelings were, and I'm not speaking for him, but I'm under the impression that because he was told he could go, he kind of wished he'd never been told he could go if the plan was going to be not to trade him. Now, another part of this is I believe the Devils have identified Markstrom as their number one target. And if it doesn't happen before the deadline, I've heard, and they won't comment either, it's not their player, but I have heard they are prepared to wait into the summer, the draft, whenever, to revisit a potential Markstrom trade. So if the Devils don't acquire another goalie with term next week, I think you're going to understand why.
It was interesting you mentioned Tanev. They made a last-ditch effort to get him to stay, too. So, yeah. It's, other teams, Ellie, lots going on.
Okay, so let's just go through a couple other teams quick. First of all, Toronto. I think they traded for Lyubushkin, who's playing tonight. I still think they're looking for another defense and see what else is out there. Nick Robertson got sent down to the American Hockey League today to make room for Yarncroke. The Maple Leafs informed Robertson this is purely because he doesn't need waivers, and he shouldn't expect a long stay in the American Hockey League. He's still in their plans to come back this season. Edmonton, I think they continue to look at a couple of things, a couple of forwards, a defenseman. They need to move someone out. They've tried to incentivize other teams to take someone out. But they continue to look at a couple forwards and a defenseman, and we'll see where they end up. There's a few different directions this could go. Jake Guentzel, the number one forward remaining on the market. From what I understand, Pittsburgh has told teams they are more interested in two prospects as opposed to a prospect and a first rounder. They prefer prospects over picks. That's what Pittsburgh has told teams. They've told several teams this. Of course, that if you need them to eat money or they have to take a contract back, that could change the dynamic. But that's the key thing. Also, Brian Rust, who's injured right now, he has a no-move clause. I'm under the impression the Penguins went to Rust recently and said, we aren't even going to ask you to move it. So Rust is going to stay with Pittsburgh. He's out right now, but he's highly respected and teams ask. Tommy Novak is another player who I think had a lot of interest out there. He's a scorer. He's only making $800K. The understanding is today, and you ought to be careful because things can always change, but the understanding is today he's not on the market. It's believed there's been progress made between him and the Predators on an extension, and they're likely to keep him. That will disappoint teams. He was a target. And finally this morning, or this afternoon, Evgeny Kuznetsov was put on waivers by the Washington Capitals, scored one of the biggest goals in franchise history to beat the Penguins in 2018. He came out of the player assistance program today. He was allowed to resume practicing. Now, earlier in the year, Kuznetsov and the Capitals and their representatives had all discussed the possibility of a fresh start. The Capitals did this to start that process today. He'll go to the American Hockey League if not claimed, but we'll see how this progresses over the next little while. You hope he's okay. It's been a tough little while for him and the Capitals.
That's all you got?
Yeah, that's all I got.
That's fantastic. Nashville Predators, unbelievable, have won 8 in a row since they weren't allowed to go see U2 at the Sphere. Crazy. There's the trade deadline date. March 8th. We'll be on the air at 10 a.m., 7 a.m. Pacific on Sportsnet.